Hey guys, I wanted to jump on here and tell you guys a story about something that happened to me recently and what I believe the Lord may be speaking to his church at this time. And I'm definitely not trying to say this is like a prophetic word or anything like that, because as I'll discuss later, I take that kind of thing very seriously. And quite frankly, I think that there's a lot of people in the church that probably don't take it seriously enough. But anyways, the story I want to tell you guys was that I was at work the other day and a buddy of mine asked me if I had heard about the new Dead Sea Scrolls discovery. And I was intrigued about what he had to say, but of course, I told him that I hadn't heard about it. And he told me that they had been excavating some caves near Jerusalem and they found some fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And some of them, they were actually able to decipher which passages these scrolls were from. And I got excited about the discovery, because my first thought was, well, if there's specific passages, is God trying to tell us something? Is God drawing attention to these passages for a specific reason? And because I'm reminded of Hebrews 4:12, which says, "For the word of God is living and active, sharper than any two-edged sword, piercing to the divisions of soul and spirit, of joints and marrow, and discerning the thoughts and the intentions of the heart." So, God speaks to us through his word, and it's always good to remind ourselves that it's living and active, and he can speak to us through it anytime. But one of the passages that was discovered was Nahum 1, verses 5 through 6, which reads this: "The mountains quake before him, the hills melt, the earth heaves before him, the world and all who dwell in it. Who can stand before his indignation? Who can endure the heat of his anger? His wrath is poured out like fire, and the rocks are broken into pieces by him." After I found this out, I began to study Nahum to see what or if God might be saying to his people after the discovery of these passages. And I was at work and I had to go take care of something in another part of the facility. And when I arrived, I began speaking to another employee who I also know to be a believer. And I looked on his computer screen and he was actually studying Nahum as well. And I asked him, I was like, "Hey, did you know about this Dead Sea Scroll discovery? Is that why you're studying Nahum?" And he said no, he hadn't heard about the discovery. And he went on to tell me about a dream that he had had the night before, where he dreamt that he was on his knees and he was on his knees praying, and somebody just put their hand on his shoulder, and he looked up at him, and they just said one word, and it was the name Nahum. So the next morning he started studying Nahum. And I told him, well, that's crazy, because I was just downstairs studying Nahum because of the Dead Sea Scroll discovery. Now, if you're familiar with Nahum, it's a tiny little prophetic book among 17 other prophetic books in the Old Testament. And so the odds of us studying at the same time was pretty small. But anyways, moving on, the second passage that was discovered was from Zechariah chapter 8, verses 16 through 17, which states this: "These are the things that you shall do. Speak the truth to one another. Render in your gates judgments that are true, and make for peace. Do not devise evil in your hearts against one another, and love no false oath. For all these things I hate, declares the Lord." So again, I'm not saying that I have like a prophetic word from the Lord, because I take that very seriously. But if I had to take a stab, if I had to just guess what the Lord might be saying to his people, I would say it's probably twofold. The first thing I think he might be saying is, after reading the Nahum passage, I'm reminded that God is still sovereign. That although it may seem like the world is going crazy and people and nations are just losing their minds, God is in control, and he can turn things whichever way he wants. The only reason he's allowing certain things to happen that may confuse us is because he has a purpose and can use those things to fulfill his greater plan, his bigger plan. And the second thing that I believe God might be saying is that he sees all the lies and the deception going on in our media, in our government, and globally, and he hates it. He hates it. And he can't stand the deception taking place. And he wants us to rest assured that it's not going unnoticed. And he wants us to actively make an effort to pursue truth and peace. So I'll give you an example of this kind of deception that I think we're seeing more often in our media and whatnot. But recently we had a shooting where the shooter targeted massage parlors in Atlanta. And obviously this is a horrible act that should be condemned regardless of the shooter's motives. But after hearing some of the facts, I found out that the shooter was struggling with a sex addiction. And as a result of his shame and confusion and mental health issues, he lashed out and did a horrible thing. Now, what was strange to me was how so many news outlets didn't bother to investigate these facts and immediately jumped to blame racism. Even though all the victims weren't of the same nationality, and even though the shooter himself told police that it was his sex addiction, not racism, that caused him to do it, and his friends even confirmed that he was dealing with a lot of difficulties because of his addiction, not racism. So we at some point have to ask ourselves why our media, our politicians, and even some faith leaders are so quick to blame a tragedy on something it had nothing to do with. Why are we trying to hand select a narrative that will better suit their political agendas? And why would that narrative be something that further divides our country and makes people of certain groups feel more on edge and ostracized? I was disappointed to see this happen, but it disappointed me even more because the real issues that need to be addressed, such as sex addiction, aren't being even looked at. For example, some studies estimate that 60 to 70% of church-going males struggle with a sexual addiction. When this shooting first happened, I thought, okay, well, maybe one of the silver linings is that it'll draw more attention to these sort of problems and people will be more aware. But unfortunately, it looks like it's not even becoming an issue. They're not even discussing it. So then again, after reading these passages, though, I'm reminded that God is in control, that he sees what's going on, he sees the lies, he sees the deception, and he is not pleased. And I believe he may be telling us that he's not going to stand idly by forever. He sees what's going on and he will act. And I'll give you another example of the type of deception that the Lord may be referring to. And this one may surprise you. It may upset some people. But the other day I was discussing this with a friend of mine, and this friend sent me a video of an urgent prophetic word that was very descriptive and very intense, I guess you could say. And this is what I'm talking about when I say that the Word of God is living and active, because he does speak through his word. And so when I was sent that prophetic word, I was simultaneously reading my devotions for the day. And I happened to be reading out of Deuteronomy chapter 18. And the verse that struck me was verse 22, which reads, when a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, if the word does not come to pass or come true, that is a word that the Lord has not spoken. The prophet has spoken presumptuously. You need not be afraid of him. So is it possible for someone to be claiming to speaking in the name of the Lord and be a false prophet? Yeah, of course. And I've been seeing a great deal of prophetic words floating around lately. And I'm not even saying that they're all wrong. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that we should keep in mind that just because a pastor has a big church or their own TV show or a few million followers on YouTube, it doesn't automatically mean that he or she is hearing from the Lord. And I was just reading A.W. Tozer, and he kind of alludes to a similar thing about this, but I love the way he put it as to why he thinks our culture is so hungry for these sort of things. And he talks about how they're so addicted to instant gratification. In his book, The Pursuit of God, he states this. He states, "We now demand glamour and fast-flowing dramatic action. A generation of Christians reared among push-button and automatic machines is impatient of slower and less direct methods of reaching their goals. We have been trying to apply machine-age methods to our relationship with God. The tragic results of this spirit are all about us. Shallow lives, hollow religious philosophies, the preponderance of the element of fun in gospel meetings, the glorification of men, trust in religious externalities, quasi-religious fellowships, salesmanship methods, the mistaking of dynamic personality for the power of the Spirit." And that's the one that stuck out to me the most. I think it's the most applicable to the point I'm trying to make, is that people often mistake dynamic personality for the power of the Spirit. He goes on to say, these and such as these are the symptoms of an evil disease, a deep and serious malady of the soul. We have to be cautious about who we are being fed by, because believe it or not, there are some people who claim to be speaking in the name of the Lord, but what they're really after is personal gain, notoriety, or glory. Not all of them, but some of them. Now, so how do we know? I mean, the Bible tells us how we know. If we want to know whether or not they're a legit prophet, is to simply pay attention to whether or not what they say comes true or not. And 100% of the time. Now hear me, I'm not saying that I don't believe in prophecies, or that the Lord is speaking to it, whether or not the Lord is speaking to his people, because this whole video is about whether or not the Lord might be speaking to his people. I'm just saying that, is it possible for people to be claimed to speak in the name of the Lord and not actually be hearing the Lord? Of course. So be careful what you open up your heart and your mind to. So to review, the two things that I think the Lord may be speaking are, one, don't forget he is sovereign and he can turn any situation around in a moment. And two, he sees all the lies, the deception, and he hates it. And he wants us to pursue truth and righteousness. He will not stand by idly forever. So that's kind of my take on what I think the Lord might be saying. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know in comments, or DM me, or if you got my number, call me or text me. And I personally, I mean, you may not think this stuff is interesting at all. I personally find it fascinating that the Lord could be speaking to us and that they found these fragments, and they all seem very timely. They all seem very applicable to what's going on in our world right now. So let me know what you think, and feel free to share the video or post your thoughts. All right. Thank you.